All right, welcome back. This is book 13. I held up a 3. There's a 1. 13 of The Wheel of Time. So Towers of Midnight by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. Now, when we get to these last couple of books, I'm not sure exactly how much, how many notes and stuff were left behind for Sanderson to go off of for these final books. I just have to assume that Sanderson had a lot of bullet points and certain things to go off of, and Robert Jordan probably had an ending in mind, which we'll get to in A Memory of Light, but Towers of Midnight finally gave me a lot of things that I was looking for a long time. Way back in Fires of Heaven, when Moraine and Lanfear died at the end of it. Of course, everybody online told me, yeah, she's dead, like that's what happened. And the only thing that really convinced me that she was dead, because again, if you don't see a body, they're probably not dead, was the note that she left behind to Lan. And he felt, the bond break, and just obviously we learned in Towers of Midnight that it was all kind of set up, which was an awesome payoff when it finally was revealed to Matt later on by Tom in the letter that she had left for Matt, basically saying, hey, I'm alive, I'm in this tower, you need to come get me. All that was super cool. But at the time, I was a bit convinced that even though I never saw a body, they were gone, because it was really that Lan scene sold me on it, just feeling that separation, that bond that they had. So it was pretty well done. And yeah, it was well done. But we do finally get Moraine back in this, which I'm just going to skip ahead to that part, just to get her part out of the way. And Robert Jordan really failing, in my opinion, to create a love story by just having Tom and Moraine just be in love with each other. I don't remember them ever having any kind of relationship prior to this, but apparently they did. Apparently there's all kinds of subtle hints and things like that. I don't buy it. I know I don't, I probably gloss over many details in these books, but show me when and where this was established that they love each other. It was just kind of hey, we got Moraine back, let's get married. What? Okay, cool. Also, you're my warder now. True love. But rewinding to the prologue was awesome, because at the conclusion of The Gathering Storm, or not the conclusion, at some point during The Gathering Storm, Rand, hunting Graendal, blows up that entire fortress and kills a bunch of people, and was convinced that Graendal was dead. So the prologue, you open up from Graendal's point of view, seeing Rand about to attack, and basically bonding or shielding two people there, and then piecing out. Jumps through a portal, gets out of there, the whole place goes up in flames, and she survived that attack because she was crazy enough and smart enough to get out of it, but also just a terrible person, and shielded two people to stay there and die instead, because it would convince Rand that she got out, or that she was dead. And it worked, but that was just a really interesting way to show the other half of that, rather than just bring Graendal back later and be yeah, I survived. I loved actually seeing it from her perspective. It was super cool. You have, of course, a lot of great Perrin in this book, and that was one of my biggest critiques since Lord of Chaos. Was Perrin was just kind of missing for several books, and when he was there, he was just chasing after Fael. This book, you spend a lot of time with him on how he's struggling with not wanting to lead. He's being sort of put up on this pedestal and looked up to as a leader, and just somebody that they want in charge, and he really doesn't want that mantle. But that Taviran in him, it keeps happening. He has to lead the Two Rivers folk, and the wolf dream, the wolves, and just everybody is kind of following him, and he just has to accept that at a certain point. So you spend a lot of time with him struggling to do that. He's learning more about how to control the wolf dream, and how he wasn't actually restricted in the ways that he was. He just didn't really quite understand how the wolf dream worked, so he kind of unlocks that ability in this book and understands the power that he has there. He spends a lot of time hunting and being hunted by Slayer throughout this as well, which is sort of a mainstay for this book and the next book. And just a lot of good Perrin stuff, a lot of dealing with the wolves. Rest in peace Hopper, because Slayer does kill quite a few wolves in this book, and he's just a real piece of garbage. We also, of course, have the loathsome White Cloaks following Perrin for the majority of this book, and wanting to kill him for all the way back books and books ago, blaming him for the death of certain White Cloaks that, they don't know the whole story that came after him, but Perrin, killed them. And so they have this great back and forth where They want Perrin to surrender himself and basically be executed. And of course, you have like the dark friends amongst the White Cloaks that are like really trying to get there and be like, no, we have to kill him. He's, submits himself to this trial for killing the White Cloaks, and Morghese is overseeing this because she is revealed to be alive. And Perrin's like, okay, well, you should decide. It's, your land, your territory, whatever. And she decides that yes, he is guilty of this, but he should not be executed. And then there's this whole back and forth between Perrin and the White Cloaks about what his punishment should be, and they kind of like put it off until after the last battle, because Perrin's like, look, I'll submit to you, but I need to get to Rand. Like, we have to fight the last battle. I don't have time for this shit right now. So that's sort of lingering over his head going into the next book. So there was a lot of really cool stuff with Perrin in this book, and honestly, it was one of my favorite books of his and POVs, just because you're really getting to know Perrin more and seeing, all the stress that he's under, and the sheer amount of power that he has and responsibility that he has. Of course, we have a nice scene early on that I don't actually think it ever paid off in the sense that, like, I don't think they ever come back to it. Faile and Perrin basically like celebrating their 1-year anniversary and being like, hey, we're going to be totally open and honest with each other. And then she like doesn't tell him anything about the guy that was like feeling her up in the last book or two, whichever book it was. She doesn't mention that she straight up knifed somebody in the prologue of the last book. She just left a few things out. So she was not open and honest with Perrin. There is the best Perrin moment too is, of course, when he realizes that the armies were marching into a trap, and there were Trollocs and Murdral and things waiting for them, and he realizes that the White Cloaks are about to walk directly into the trap. So he marches his army back to save them, and of course you get to see the White Cloaks' perspective of like, oh, there's Perrin, I knew it. He's a dark friend, he's coming to attack us, and they start shooting like over the White Cloaks into the woods, like killing Trollocs, and they save the day. They save the White Cloaks from the Trollocs, they kind of join forces, and of course Byar, being a piece of garbage, still wants him executed, and actually tries to kill Perrin, and what's his name? Bornhald actually saves Perrin and kills Byar, which kind of messes with him because White Cloak on White Cloak crime, I guess. But just so many good scenes between the White Cloaks and Perrin. That was the bulk of this book, and it was fantastic. And then, of course, the final payoff for Perrin at, everything that I was just talking about is he finally accepts that, like, he kind of has to lead these people. He's going to accept the mantle of, being in charge of them and sort of like being their king in a way, and crafts this badass warhammer and decides that he's going to put up his banner and lead, because that's what everybody wants him to do anyway. So he accepts that and marches, towards Rand and the last battle. We spent a good amount of time with Gawain in this book, which, again, another relationship that I give no fucks about is Gawain and Egwene, because Gawain is just so hard to root for. I don't care about him at all. He annoys me. I just don't like him. And he spends most of this book being a gigantic doofus and ruining Egwene's defenses around her room and trying to capture whoever is killing people in the White Tower. She at one point sets a trap, and he catches somebody about to walk into her room, which is unlocked. Like, it's clearly set up because she wants them to come in so she can fight them. And he chases that person off and then runs into the room and like gets thrown up onto the ceiling, and like all of her shields and shit just break. She was super pissed, and he's just like, oh, just let me defend you. Like, he's simping so hard in this book, just like begging Egwene to love him and let him be her warder. And of course, it does finally pay off where he had a point. So, I mean, I can't hate him too much, because by the end of it, when she is in Tel'aran'rhiod, she would have died at one point, because it's the two blood knives that attack her later. Gawain ends up taking down like a total badass, and basically almost dying himself. Cuts the lights off, fights him in the shadows, and just that whole scene was great. But after, being this just relentless idiot for most of the book, and Egwene being stubborn and not accepting any help, he finally saves her life. She realizes it. They bond. He's her warder. She saves him. Now they can live happily ever after. They tell each other that they love each other. Like, I don't know. I don't buy any of these relationships really in these books, but that was the second worst relationship in this. Moiraine and Tom definitely takes the cake for the worst one, because that felt even more random and out of nowhere. We, of course, do get like all the Tricans back in this book, though, because you've got Gawain, you're sort of reunited with Morghese and Elaine, and they have this nice family reunion, and Morghese is alive, but she's sort of accepting that Elaine's going to be queen. So we have all that stuff, which is pretty cool. And Margai's, I think, gets married in this book too, which I don't care about either. But this is like the book of love. But yeah, Margai's also has a relationship. And then, of course, we get a lot of great Matt Cawthon in this book, who, as I mentioned before, I didn't really like until about book 4 of the series. I've loved him ever since, but he, as annoying as Sanderson made him at points in the last book with like the really bad failed comedy, I really liked him in this book. And the entire quest with Tom to find Moraine at the Tower of Genji, him interacting with Elaine and Brigida was great. Sort of loaning Elaine his medallion, which comes back later. Him defeating the golem was awesome, and like kicking it through a gateway, it was sick. And just, I mean, going to the tower and constantly hearing about the snakes and the foxes, and then having that payoff where, I finally understand what this scene is, when, I believe this was when they escape, when they cut through the wall and like get out of the tower. But, Matt, being the gambler that he is, thinks that he, pulled the wool over everybody's eyes and just thought of this great plan. And, says, I'm going to walk out with Moraine. I think he said the foxes can't hunt him or whatever he said. But of course, that the snakes can. So they have to run and try to get out. And as part of Matt's sacrifice, or I guess trade-off, he had to lose an eye. So they cut his eye out, which is pretty gnarly, which was super cool because I didn't know this, of course, because I forgot. But that was foreshadowed in one of Min's visions back in like Eye of the World or Great Hunt, one of the first 2 books. Like that was part of a vision. So super cool that Robert Jordan had so much shit planned out. And that's awesome that we get to see that payoff. And I'm happy to have Moraine back, even with her weird, random insta-love with Tom that makes no sense to me. It's fine. Moraine's back, and I'm happy. Yeah, so the weird thing about this cover is, if I remember in the book, Matt uses his Ashendari to carve the triangle in the wall. But, I mean, I assume this one's Tom, and this is probably Nail. And Nail stays behind and, like, kind of sacrifices himself to get them out. He's one of the Ashaman, but he looks old as shit. So I think it's Nail. One of them is. And then it's Matt and Tom. But they get out. They get out with Moraine. And yeah, now we have some more. So that's like 3 different love stories that we've had now. And we have a lot of awesome moments with Matt and Perrin. We've got some great Rand moments. He's not in it as much, but him and Min are together a good amount. And adorably, Rand introduces Min to his father. It's super cute. Because I like having the dynamic of, Rand's sort of still descent into madness, but, Tam being there sort of grounds him in a way, and he's able to have his father there and remember that he's Rand and he's not just Lews Therin, he's not completely crazy. And so there's a lot of great dialogue between them as, father and son. More of that to come as well. But, he introduces Min to his dad, which is just cute. He also just like kills thousands of Trollocs at one point, defending Meriden? Is that what, Meriden? Frost balls and death gates, and he's just like Lews Therin throwing shit around and just killing thousands of Trollocs because he's strong as hell. And he's sort of like accepted Lews Therin as part of him. And that's what's really cool about this series is the whole like Wheel of Time turning and reincarnation and stuff like that. You really don't have a solid grasp of that early on in the series of like what all that entails, other than, sort of the Aes Sedai and the mystery around being told that people are reincarnated, and you have like the Horn of Valir that brings back a bunch of heroes. But you start to see more and more that they are literally like living lives over and over again as themselves and other people. So like the entire cycle of the Wheel of Time is just a really cool concept. And you're starting to learn more of that, especially with Rand and having Lews Therin in his mind. It's just really cool. And also, of course, we get tons of dialogue of Rand trying to convince everybody, like, okay, 1, I cleansed the power. 2, I have to break the seals to actually defeat the Dark One and reseal him properly, because if you just slap a Band-Aid on it, like he's going to get out again, everybody thinks he's crazy, and he's going crazy trying to convince everybody, like, I'm breaking the seals whether you want me to or not. That's what has to happen. We're going to do it, and I'm going to win. Elaine is definitely not as annoying as she used to be. I actually kind of like her now. She almost got herself killed in this book, though. She gets a disguise to, like, find Chesmal, and spy on her, and then gets found out and like gets her body like broken and gets stabbed. She almost dies in this book, and it's just like there's so many near deaths for a lot of these characters at this point that it's just like, can y'all be a little bit more careful, please? She's not in it a lot, so the next two aren't in it a whole lot. Tuon, of course, is planning an all-out attack on the one tower because she is the leader of the Shanshan. She's their empress, and she wants to take down the tower. We also have Nynaeve, who again isn't in it very much, but at the tower. All these snooty Aes Sedai that are like, you gotta follow the rules, you're not a real Aes Sedai. Like, put her back through the trials. She clears them wonderfully, but like didn't do it by the book. So they're like, you didn't do it right, so you're not an Aes Sedai. She's just like, look, I will murder all of you, okay? I did this, I did it better than you can. I'm an Aes Sedai. And they're just like, chill, all right, she's an Aes Sedai. Relax, okay? So some of my favorite scenes in the epilogue are Olvar and Telmanis, right? Telmanis and Olvar are playing Snakes and Foxes and shooting the shit, like waiting for Matt to get back. And I forget which of them does it, but one of them opens Matt's letter, and it's like, oh, hey, by the way, the Trollocs are going to use Waygates and attack Caemlyn. So get to Caemlyn now and destroy them before it's too late. And they like look up, and Caemlyn's on fire, and they're just like, ready the troops, we gotta go. We get a chilling scene with Rand, because of course Moraine's back, so Lanfear has to be alive, right? Rand actually finds Lanfear like in a dream, and she's just being tortured, and she's like sad and lonely and beaten half to death. And you actually kind of feel bad for Lanfear, and it was a great scene, because you're like, you know that Rand, well, more Luce Theron, but Rand too, like has feelings for Lanfear, even though she's the worst person ever. And it was just a super cool scene to get her back in the books and see like how far she's fallen. We of course wrap the book with Lan with his army, declares himself king, and stares across Tarwin's Gap and gives sort of a badass speech. And like I was getting like the Battle of Pelennor Fields vibes, like chills, as they charge this Trolloc army that's way bigger than their army. And you know it's like they're charging to their doom kind of thing, just like Rohan was in Minas Tirith. It was just a great sort of wrapping scene to end on. I loved that part of the epilogue. It's super cool, and it really just is the first of many battles to come, because A Memory of Light is like battle, which I'll talk about in my next review, of course, which will be a couple days after this. But I loved A Memory of Light. I did love that book. I love Towers of Midnight. Like I said, ever since Knife of Dreams, all these books have been, knocking out of the park for me. Towers of Midnight was fantastic. I loved pretty much everything about it. All the POVs were interesting. Just the plots, the story arcs that our characters have gone on, everything building up and leading to the last battle. It's been fantastic. So, of course, I'm going to talk about A Memory of Light in the next video, but I love this one. Great penultimate book of the series. Couldn't have asked for more. On to A Memory of Light.